Hello, everyone. Thank you for visiting my channel, Educational Norm. I work as an educational consultant, which means that I have the opportunity to interact and visit with many teachers across Ohio and beyond. Those interactions have driven me to tell their stories and their ideas on education. The goal of Educational Norm is to provide an informational network that focuses on positive aspects of education, the people preparing students for the future of our world. Join us each week for a new interview, and please subscribe and share the channel with others that you think may enjoy the program. Thank you and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Today we are here with Dr. Kelly Moran. She is the Director of Instructional Programs for the ESC of the Western Reserve, and she sits on their Business Advisory Council. She is also an adjunct professor for John Carroll University and for Lake Erie College. And I had the pleasure of meeting Kelly about 3 years ago now, when we started talking about college and career readiness for students. And happy to say that the ESC has really been the leader of the group in the Geauga and Lake counties around here. So, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Norm. It's so great to connect here today. I enjoy any chance I get to speak to educators and talk about the work that we're doing in the Northeast region of the state. We're very proud here at the Educational Service Center of the Western Reserve, and it's been great for you and I to stay in contact over the years and just share ideas and brainstorm and celebrate the work that all of us are doing in this realm.
Yes, I love the fact that we just sat down a few times and you were able to use some ideas from all different parts of the conversation. It was not just myself, but the whole business table that was around and bring it to fruition for schools and for kids because that doesn't happen. Usually there's a lot of talk and a little
Yeah.
action. I've seen the opposite with you is there's a lot of action and we don't have to talk about it a lot. Let's just do it. So I love that aspect.
That's right. Well, I think you can relate to this. The phrase I like to use is instructional innovators. So many of us in the field of education call ourselves teachers and educators, and that's great. We provide instruction, but to do so in an innovative way really requires us to always be open to brainstorming with a thought partner, not being stuck within our own box or our own paradigm. And I just think we're stronger when we work together, when we're empathetic listeners, when we take new ideas and trial them out in implementation cycles. It can be exciting what we can accomplish.
It really is. And I do think you do a great job there at the ESC, bringing people to the table and having those great discussions. And anybody that's in this area knows you because you are so active in a lot of the schools in Lake and Geauga County. But for people that are outside of the area, give us a little bit of a background about yourself and the job that you currently do.
Sure. I'm definitely active. And I think what comes to mind is I once heard this phrase that the world makes space for passionate people. So I am really passionate. And I think it's my passion that drives me to do great work. I get excited about the projects that I get to do. And so through that, I have fulfillment and enjoyment. Literacy is one of my passions in education. My background is in elementary ed, so I started as a third grade teacher and quickly thereafter became a literacy coach. I knew that I wanted to make a bigger difference and impact more educators, and so I was able to step into an assistant principal position and then building principal. From there, again, because of networking and collaboration and open doors and opportunities, I've also been able to serve as a director of curriculum and federal programs coordinator. And I say all that to say as part of my story because that's what led me to an educational service center, right? It was all of those opportunities along the way, the mistakes and learning from those mistakes, the growing pains, meeting new people, and hearing and seeing the needs of a variety of schools. Up here in Northeast Ohio, we've got diverse populations of geographic locations, socioeconomic status, ethnic backgrounds. So all of our schools and districts have very different needs. However, what links all of them together is that they are aiming to develop literate students. And I just believe that literacy is today's currency. No matter who you are or where you're from, what grade level, what career aspirations you have, you need to be literate and able to succeed. And so that is why literacy is my passion. And since day one of stepping into the role as director of curriculum and instruction at the Educational Service Center of the Western Reserve, I really wanted to provide more programming around literacy. more professional development, more access to resources, more job embedded coaching. And so we've done things like we've done a shared literacy coaching model where we've gathered together the literacy coaches from all of our districts in our region. We would meet with them on a monthly basis because they are the experts in their own domain. They know best, right? So bringing those people together to collectively create resources, problem solve, develop our own community of practice, as well as take those folks through training together. So we together did the AIMS pathway modules on structured literacy, on pathways to literacy. So we were also learning together collectively, and we know that that's a better model than learning in isolation.
Mhm.
So from there, that's just one example of the work that we've done at the Educational Service Center, the Western Reserve. We've been really proud to do other events like a dyslexia simulation event. So we did this last spring and invited educators, school leaders, parents, people from the community. And we partnered with IDA, the Northeast Ohio branch of the
Mhm.
International Dyslexia Association, to run this simulation and to just see firsthand people walking, an hour or so in the shoes of what it would be like to be a dyslexic reader was really, really profound and powerful. That's the type of events that mean the most to us. We also did a free movie screening at Atlas Cinema in Mentor, Ohio last year, where we again opened the doors. We brought in vendor partnerships, so refreshments were covered and the cost of the screening was covered. And we watched a documentary, the Right to Read documentary, and then followed up the viewing with a open conversation with discussion questions. So not only do I personally care about the professional development and training of our teachers in schools, I think that's critical, but I think being in an educational service center opens the doors to having an even greater influence in folding in parents, community members, agencies, higher ed. The possibilities are endless.
You do such great work there, and I think that and I mentioned this earlier to you, uh, you're really big into the literacy aspect of it and providing that training because it is the critical piece that all kids need to be successful in this world. And the big push right now in Ohio, and I'm sure in a lot of other places, is the science of reading. And as soon as I wanted to learn, I came to you and asked you what book do you recommend? And I got through text to speech or
Yep.
speech to text.
Yep,
That was the other
great.
way around. And I would tell you I got through the first three chapters. I'm going, I don't know if I can get through this. And it was 3 pages later that everything started making sense. It was one of those technical reads at the beginning, but then they give you the practical what you can do in your classroom. So tell me a little bit about the push with the science of reading. Obviously, we don't have time to go into everything about the science of reading, but I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is, how it should be used, and exactly how to implement within the classroom.
Mhm. I do too. What I'd like to start with first by saying is I think it's amazing that you exposed yourself as a vulnerable learner, and that's a model, Norm, right? I wish more of us in education could show that vulnerability and that interest in learning in areas in which we don't feel very strong or expert level competence. That's a model for our peers in the field, but also for the students that we interact with. I'm very proud to be in the state of Ohio during this time. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that there is a lot being asked of educators. There's been
Mhm.
a lot of requirements and a lot of mandates. And man, that takes some work, that takes
Mhm.
effort, that takes allocation of resources, that takes configuration. So there's a lot of orchestration going on at the higher levels of leadership in schools. Again, that's why I like being employed by the Educational Service Center because we can come in and support. But for those who are new to the science of reading, trust me, this is an exciting time. We have this convergence of decades of research that our state is turning to inform us of best practice. So we're lucky to be in Ohio where we have Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement. It's literally a blueprint based on the simple view of reading that shows us as educators how we should be teaching in the classroom. And what's stressed throughout that document is direct, explicit instruction. You know, I said earlier in our conversation about how critical literacy is and how it can be a currency to a successful life.
Mhm.
Therefore, we don't want to leave the ability to learn how to read up to chance for our students, especially our young students. It is a very complex task to read. And also, let's not forget about writing and speaking. Those are also literacy skills. And so to step back and have students work in a messy way, in a confusing way, in a self-discovery way, I think that's risky. And Ohio knows that. And so that's why through the science of reading, we stress that the importance of direct, explicit instruction. Now, Ohio has done some other really exciting things like pass dyslexia support laws. So we are now required to do screening for students because we know, again, from research that early intervention is key. We can't intervene early if we don't have screening data that shows a need for students. So we've got that implementation going on. And we also have a requirement for educator and school administrator professional development in dyslexia and the science of reading. So it's a challenge. Many of us in the field, in the middle of our careers, later in our careers, or maybe even new to the field, might not have started in education in a place where they've had a wealth of knowledge on the science of reading. So having this expectation that we get this training now, although yes, it's something else we need to do, really helps to unlock our potential in the classroom with students so that we can develop all of them as successful readers. So again, I'm really excited about that. The other thing I'd like to mention on the topic of science of reading is that I think one of the misnomers out there that exists is that this is a overwhelmingly or primarily phonics driven approach. And that's not the case. Now, again, don't get me wrong, phonics is an extremely important part of the science of reading, but it's just a part, it's just one component. We need to be very intentional about growing kids' knowledge base. So we need to make sure we are teaching them concepts, stories, history, the arts, science, mathematics, topics, and studying topics in depth so that they can build up their schematic knowledge to then use that as a stepping stone to grow in all of their literacy skills. So although in Ohio, our model of instruction is built upon that simple view of reading, we know that teaching reading and being a successful reader isn't so simple, right?
No.
It's very complex and it deserves a lot of intentionality.
Well, there are two things that I learned in the process of trying to get up to speed on the science of reading. One, reading isn't a natural process at all,
Right.
and your brain is not wired to do that. So you're actually creating those connections in your brain to learn how to read, which is phenomenal to me. And I give more credit to knowing elementary teachers are doing that on a daily basis. And the other part is the learning styles are sort of you have to get past that you can teach this in a different way. It's a very specific way that you need to teach these skills and this idea of reading to people. And it doesn't matter if they're an outdoorsy person or not. They still have to do X, Y, and Z to be a good reader. And I know that that has sort of been debunked about a good learning theory over the last few years, but I don't think that has reached the masses yet. So when I say that, they go, "Well, we go outside and read." That's not that's not it. You're using different modalities and you're doing different environments, but you're still teaching the same skills. And those skills, that direct instruction, is the important part. So when you were giving your understanding of that to everyone, you talked a lot about the theory of it. I think what scares teachers is what does it look like in my classroom? And I think that's a huge part
Mhm.
like, on how to go from understanding these theories and ideas and how it looks with my, 25 kids that I have in my classroom. So what are you seeing in schools that's being effective in that direct instruction format?
Yeah, great question. When you were talking, you reminded me or prompted my brain to expound a little bit on that direct, explicit instruction piece. I heard you say things like being sequential matters, right? Building upon starting with simple um, t ideas and building up to more complex, right? So it has to be sequential, it has to be cumulative, and it's got to be explicit. So thank you for adding that to the conversation. In terms of what I'm seeing in the classroom, my goodness, there's so many good things going on. What I love seeing is the gradual release model. So Anita Archer is kind of the expert that many of us turn to when it comes to that explicit instruction piece and talking about gradual release. And so she can teach us and inform us as teachers that it's really important to model first for your students, give them clear expectations and show them an example. And then from there, have deliberate guided practice. So practicing collectively or in partners or small groups in a safe enough environment in which kids can give mistake or kids can make mistakes. When those mistakes happen, though, what is visible in the classroom that has power behind it is immediate corrective feedback. That is something that I'm seeing in classrooms that I know to be very powerful. And then gradually releasing even more for that continual, cumulative, independent, deliberate practice. Those things are very important in the literacy framework. In addition to all of that, vocabulary is extremely important, and I'm seeing a lot more of that intentional instruction in classrooms. Now, what I love about teaching vocabulary within this environment of a science of reading focus is that the vocabulary words are interconnected. They're connected to the stories, the literature, the discourse that the students are being presented with, which is really critical. And really innovative teachers are also taking those vocabulary words. Not only are they connected in text, and not only are they having students write about them, but they're also analyzing those words and studying the etymology, the morphology, the syllable type of those words. So all of this, all of the braids of Scarborough's reading rope are really coming together with all of those finite, discrete skills. So those are some things that I'm seeing in the classroom. I'd like to also mention writing. In an age and environment in which we have such wonderful access to such strong technology and digital tools, is really exciting, and we can do a lot with that. But I think many teachers also know that it's very critical to get students writing more often, and using tactile experiences to do writing. I'm not trying to say that we should never be composing on digital devices, and certainly we need those digital devices for some of our students in an assistive way, which is critical. But I think if we're looking at good quality instruction through the science of reading lens, we know how important writing is and how much writing bolsters and augments comprehension. And the better comprehension we have, the better writers we become.
Well, I shared with you that the interview that I had earlier today was with a writing specialist. They do Collins writing out of, I want to say it's New Hampshire, but it might actually have been in Massachusetts. But that writing piece goes across the curriculum, which is something else that the science of reading is not contained within ELA. It is a across the board, everybody needs to be involved. Everybody needs to know the basics of this. And the vocabulary piece is something that I've been working on with a lot of schools when it comes to your vocabulary list needs to reflect the readings that you're doing, not just a random 10 words that you're just pulling. And they have to make sense with what they're currently being taught and and that's in every subject, not just English, and how that can be related into the reading. So it's interesting. I'm glad you said that about vocabulary because that does lend itself to all subjects. And I think that's
Mhm.
important. One question I get often, and this is something that I have my answers and my thoughts behind it, but I want to hear what you say is once we get past third and fourth grade, when they are reading, why do I need science of reading as a teacher? Because they should already know it. So could you address that? I have my answers, but go ahead.
Yes, I think it's a great question. And honestly, I encourage educators to be asking questions. We should be critical, right? And our time is precious. So I think that question really comes from a place of wanting to protect our time and knowing our subject area and our discourse well, and preserving the time to teach that, right? That's where I think that mostly comes from. So I think it's important because if you've ever walked a day in the life of a teacher, it's pretty It would be pretty typical that somewhere along your career, you would encounter a student who is struggling to read or struggling with the academic content. And I can only speak for myself, but when you see that, it's pretty gut-wrenching. And what we know is that as students climb or matriculate through the grades, those gaps in their knowledge and their skill sets continue to widen. So if we see a student who's struggling beyond third grade, right, a fourth grade, a fifth grade, or an eighth grade student, and we're not able to help that child is only going to continue to carry that heavy weighted burden of coming to school every day. And so whether it's just one student in your class, or it's three students or seven students who are struggling, I think having knowledge on the science of reading is going to help you as a teacher make an impact in at least that one life. And again, I think many of us chose this career path because we wanted to be difference makers, right? So that's just one element of why understanding the science of reading is going to be helpful to an educator. There's several other reasons, right? We're in the business of educating minds. So if it is our job to show up in the classroom every day and help develop brains, teach kids, well, we should know a little bit about brain structure. We should know how the brain works. What does the brain want? What can we do that makes the brain successful? So although I'm very passionate about literacy and I love the science of reading, what I'm getting really attuned to now and really excited about is just the science of learning in general. So when you learn about the science of reading, not only are you learning things that are literacy specific, you're learning how to become a better teacher to any brain. And then I'd also just add all of our courses, all of our topics that students encounter beyond third grade. So whether it is sixth grade science, whether it is eighth grade orchestra, whether it's level one Spanish or welding, all of those courses have its own discourse, meaning all of those courses have its own vocabulary words, its own language, its way of communicating. There's different types of texts that you read and you encounter in those different classes. And so when you learn about the science of reading, you're learning how to be the most effective teacher you can for the language that is being used. So whether you represent, like I said, math, humanities, sciences, technical subjects, you need to be able to know what those evidence-based practices are for intervention and instruction to help all of your students be able to access your content that you're so passionate about.
I love your brain passion myself. The idea that understanding how the brain learns is so critical. And it was actually one of the very first PDs I ever went to when I became a teacher was John Sousa, who was does a lot of work with brain research. And I took so much from just that one day with him. It was truly incredible. And I think this lends itself to one of the other topics that I think you've become very passionate about was the Ruby Payne piece that you're offering when it comes to understanding children of poverty and how that impacts learning, because there's so much that the brain is not getting when
Mhm.
it comes to this kind of situation. So I think that's a great segue from reading into one of your offerings at the ESC that I think is so valuable. And I'm so sorry I can't be there because I have a previous commitment. But could you tell us about your emotional poverty and Ruby Payne's work that you're going to be presenting there?
Absolutely. Thank you for giving me that opportunity to speak about it and hearing your interest in it just really sparked something in me. We ran these offerings last year and it's because there was such great interest. We're doing them again this year. And I hope there's more people out there like you who maybe have a schedule conflict. If there's interest, we'll keep running it. And yeah, so I can't speak highly enough about our presenter, Dr. Lonnie Rivera, who knows Ruby Payne's work inside, outside, upside down, and backwards. Not only is he competent to speak on the topic, he's a truly motivating and inspiring speaker. So if you get the opportunity, come join us. We'll be at Men Are Paradigm February 7th, Friday, and Friday, April 4th for full day trainings in emotional poverty. Now, these are free. And we encourage, they're appropriate for any type of audience. So this is good content for teachers, counselors, parents, principals, upper administration, community agencies. And so what is the tie here, right, between emotional poverty and literacy? Well, for those of us who have had training in education, we probably had a course somewhere along the lines or were taught by an instructor about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so just a quick overview of that hierarchy of needs, Maslow would say we can't achieve at higher levels. We can't learn new content or perform at our best if our basic needs aren't being met, like shelter and food and love and security and safety. And so what we're seeing in our environment, I think if many of us can attest to this, whether, it's a result of the pandemic or post-pandemic, or maybe it always existed and it was just amplified or magnified through our pandemic, is that more and more people are struggling. And we have students who are struggling, but we also have adults who are struggling. And so, again, in your environment, maybe that's a very small portion of individuals. Maybe you just have one student who might come from a place of poverty, or maybe you might have one colleague who's experiencing poverty. Maybe you represent a school or a district or an organization where you are just overwhelmed and surrounded by poverty. Either way, going through this training will help you in a couple of ways. One, it's going to grow your awareness. So for someone like me who's lived a privileged, blessed, safe, secure life, I don't know the impacts of poverty and what that can bring. So I learned a lot. Second, it's going to provide you with concrete strategies, tactics. Like you said earlier, teachers are great learners, but they also want to know, what do I do here? Like, it exists. Give me a tool, a strategy, an idea of something I can turn around the next day and start doing to help my students or my colleagues or my families that I'm working with. And so Ruby Payne's books that Dr. Rivera so expertly goes through, he's extracted those tactile strategies and ideas and action planning and shares them with everyone. It's also a beautiful event because it's like I'm circling back to the beginning of our call, Norm. It conjures up this essence of networking, collaborating, and brainstorming. None of us are in this work together. Education is all about team and community. And so when you come to this event and you've got, you know, groups and groups of different school districts and representatives from different agencies, the thoughts and the ideation that is able to come is really powerful.
I became a fan of that work of Ruby Payne when I was working in Ashtabula. We went through a series of trainings with them because we had a high number of students living in poverty in our district. And it was eye-opening for even those of us that thought we knew a lot. We really didn't know what the brain was dealing with and what the kids were dealing with and how that impacts our approach and our work with our kids. Um, the instant gratification pieces and how the brain is wired for those types of things just really hit home. And I think it made a difference in anybody that hears her work. And it sounds like you have a speaker that can convey that message very well. So that's so exciting. And again, that's February 7th is the first date, and then there's a second date of April 4th. So they are free. I will put on some information at the end of the show on where they can look for the information and how they can get it. I will also put your email if that's okay, or
Perfect.
mine. Either way,
You,
one
yes.
way or another, we'll get it out there. Um, the idea that this is being offered for free, that
Mm.
is a big deal. And I appreciate that work. Again, I just can't say enough about that lesson. I think it will be very valuable for anybody that attends. There's another thing you have going on, and this one also interested me a lot
Yes.
because of our work,
Yep.
the business educator business boot camp.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love this idea. So could you share what it is, and I'll tell why I love it so much when when you're done.
Absolutely. 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 So, Educator Business Boot Camp, at first blush, it doesn't seem to relate at all to the topic of literacy, which we've spent so much time talking. But I'd like to anchor us again in the topic of literacy. And I think I said it earlier in our conversation about literacy being the currency. It is the conduit to success. And so, if you're in the business of education, not only are you all about educating that brain, but you are hoping to contribute to a student's life in a way that sets him or her up for success beyond graduation. And again, what's so exciting about being in Ohio right now is our state's departments emphasis on developing workforce, right? We need to prepare students for tomorrow, and we want them to have successful careers. Now, for many of us in education, all we know, however, is education. We went to school K-12, many of us went to university or college for our degree, and then we returned right back to the brick and mortar schoolhouse to start teaching. We lack awareness in what exists in our great state of Ohio in terms of job opportunities. And I believe, I hope it's correct. I just read the other day that Ohio is like the top third state in the country when it comes to manufacturing jobs. And so, really, we have some great opportunities for students here in our state. So, how do we go about making our educators more aware of these job opportunities, as well as hear from industry and business leaders what they are looking for in terms of hiring future employees, and working together in a team to come up with better ideas for career advising our students, for developing curriculum in the classroom, for learning about what resources exist out there to develop career awareness and give students, skills and training in school for certifications. That's what our Educator Business Boot Camp is all about. So we take 3 days and we space them out because we recognize it's hard to be out of the classroom. And honestly, your time in the classroom with students is very valuable. So we do a day in March. We come back for a second day in April, and then we have a culminating day in May. And what we do every year is we reach out to find a variety of different businesses, manufacturing, technology, healthcare. We're trying to cast as wide a net as we can, and represent a very diverse opportunity to see different careers and career paths. We tour those places of employment. We sit down with the leaders of those businesses, those hospitals, those manufacturing plants, those tech companies, and we listen. We learn from them. We hear firsthand from them what they're looking for in future employees. They advise us on what we can be doing during the day with students and educating them and providing them with curriculum. And we also hear what their barriers and their challenges are. So one day we're primarily touring Lake County businesses. The second day we're touring primarily Geauga County businesses. And on the third day, we reconvene to hear from an expert panel. So we pull in who are the experts out there that can sit with us, roll up our sleeves together, and now's the time for action planning. Now that we've seen, we've heard, we've learned, what are we doing now when we return back to our districts to make a difference for kids? And that is really exciting work and great stuff happening.
I've been on three similar situations where we were able to take teachers out. And like you said, they have never been in anything other than an education realm. So when you take them out and show them how often the manufacturing facilities are monitored and evaluated for performance because they have to be precise, or how different it is than the vision they have of what manufacturing is, the current work environments that they're always telling their kids, well, when you get out in the workplace, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. In reality, it may not be like that at all, just because they haven't had that experience. Every teacher that has been on one of those trips comes back going, I didn't know this, this, and this. And it really is, it's a shot in the arm for them on figuring out what they can do to be more real and more preparatory for the kids when it gets back in the classroom. I think that one of the biggest eye openers was when we were at it was a prosthetic eye and denture place, and everybody that was working there was probably, 21 to 27. They all had their
Yeah.
lab coats on. They were wearing shorts and a t-shirt under the lab coat. They had their YouTube playing as they were painting
Yeah.
eyeballs, and it was a very different work environment than any of us had ever seen. And they go, they work until they're done. And when they're done for the day, they just go home. There's no time. They just show up when you need to, get done when you need to. And that's very different than anything we ever think of. And it's unique. I'll give them that. It's a unique situation, but there are places like that. And I think it's important for teachers to see all of that. And I
Mhm.
know also at the ESC, you've done corporate challenges. So,
Yes.
woohoo, I love corporate challenges. So, could you talk to our audience about what corporate challenges you've done and what they are, actually?
Yes, I would be honored to. And I can't start talking about Corporate Challenge without saying a huge thank you to you, Norm. So you were the one who came and introduced me for the first time to what a corporate challenge was. And so I just want to thank you for the legacy and the contribution you've made in education and doing those events and learning experiences yourself, because that's where I learned. So I appreciate you so much for mentoring me and showing me the ropes with the corporate challenges. So the corporate challenges are great because now we've created an event and a learning experience that is a direct benefit to students. So the educator business boot camp is cool, but that's a benefit firsthand for the teachers, right? We want to be doing more programming for students during the student day. What experiences can we give them where they're interacting with a real world job, a real world place of business, while at the same time working on developing those soft skills that we know are so critical to our employers. So the corporate challenge is all about breaking down barriers, right? I think about when I was a teacher, when I was a school principal, and planning field trips, right? And students love field trips and they are so meaningful, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through when you're doing a field trip. What I love about the corporate challenge is we're breaking down the barrier and we're most often bringing the business or the industry or the community partner into the schools for the students. So we bring in the business partner, they come to the students' class, they present to the class on who they are and what career field they represent. They tell the students about a story that their line of work is experiencing, and they share real world problems that their occupation is facing. From there, the students have an amount of time, typically a 2 or 3 week period, to work on possible solutions. What's great about the corporate challenge is that it's adaptable. So some teachers like to put their students in small groups to work on solutions. Sometimes students are working independently. Sometimes students are working as a whole class to come up with solutions. But the students are working on so many different skill sets when they are doing those solutions. So they're researching, they're crunching numbers, they're having to work together as a team, they're comparing, they're analyzing, they're preparing talking points. I could go on and on. At the culmination of those couple of weeks, the business partner comes back, representatives from the Educational Service Center come to the classroom, and we have a showcase where the students stand up and present their solutions. So they're getting some of that real world experience of having to present to an audience and get feedback, which isn't an easy thing to do. So now when they go to an interview one day, trying to get that first job, and they get hit with those questions of what experience do you have in XYZ, they can at least say, well, I've had this great experience doing a corporate challenge and I had to overcome this obstacle or work through this hard spot, and I overcame it in this way. So I think it's a great way to do a couple things. I think it adds a lot of relevance and motivation to students. It connects businesses and the schools, which is wonderful. And again, it's really developing the skill sets we want our students to have so that they can be successful beyond graduation.
I totally agree, and I'm going to add one more. It allows the students to start building their own professional network, where if
Yes.
they do something very, very well, there's a person in front of them that employs people. And if
Mhm.
they are really that thrilled with them, there's nothing to say the employer can't go up and say, "Hey, what grade are you in? What are you interested in? I think there might be a spot for you down the road if this is something you're interested in doing." And we know kids of poverty and kids that may not have the connections now, they really struggle for that opportunity to meet people because they don't have those
Right.
experiences. It's really a good thing, and it's not overly difficult to implement as long as you find the right business.
That's right. That's right.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's all good. So we've talked a lot already. We have teachers that need to teach reading, career prep, doing all these things for students to make sure that they're, moving down the pathway they should be. And
Yeah.
we sometimes forget about ourselves, and we
Right.
have to talk about. I think another aspect that I've seen quite a bit about is the wellness for teachers, the educator wellness, and how we can go about doing things for ourselves and for our staff, depending on your role, to be cognitively aware, thinking about it all the time, being intentional about wellness for our staff. What are you doing at the ESC in that regard?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you launched us into this topic. Uh, Parallel with literacy, I think educator wellness is one that I'm most passionate about. I feel like we can only do our best work as teachers and really high demand role models when we take care of ourselves. And I also think we do our best work when we feel good about ourselves. And so I'd hate to see educator wellness be something that falls to the bottom of the to-do list. And so that's why at the ESC, we're also making that a priority. So I've run free professional development sessions for teachers to join so that they can learn about educator wellness. We've also done in events in our schools to highlight at a model site what exactly they're doing with educator wellness. So Kirtland is a great example.
Mhm.
Superintendent Chad Van Arnhem there opened his doors. We brought in educators. They gave a great presentation and a site tour to show us the things that they're doing for educators, like on professional development days, folding in opportunities for physical activity. There are equipment and weights and things available on campus. There's also, challenges that they do to motivate one another. They've done book studies. I think that just by helping to grow awareness and making the topic one in which we revisit and talk about is extremely important. And so the ESC is committed to that work, and it's why we run the programming that we do to focus on that.
It's a great piece, and I often think we forget about ourselves being students of life. And if we
Mhm.
apply all these educational theories that we know, we have to take care of Maslow first for ourselves. We can't just expect that we can do it for kids. We take care of ourselves, and then we can open ourselves up to deeper learning about all of the things that we're talking about. You may not know a lot about science of reading now, but if you're in the right state of mind, you can get yourself to where you want to be, but you have to be in the right state of mind. You can't be unhealthy and have mental concerns about your life in general and be effective within your own classroom. So I like to turn the tables on teachers once in a while and say, how is your Maslow? Where are you at on this? And
Right.
and what's your level of understanding? Is it one, two, three, or four webs up of knowledge on this topic? I like using those because then they go, oh, I might just be a two. It's a lower understanding. So I think it does become very important for not just the teachers to take time on their own, but also for administration to provide those opportunities as well.
Mhm.
Besides Kirtland, what other schools around here are you know, buying into the wellness piece with their staff?
hmm I mean, I can think of so many. I think of, Chardon right down the street from me is very cognizant about the demands that they place on teachers. Superintendent Hanlon has graciously allowed teachers to work remotely on days like Records Day so that they can be in the comfort of their own home and kind of give them some flexibility and autonomy in that. So I think that's really powerful. Matt Prezioso, who's principal at Munson, did a staff book study on the book Spark, which is all about movement and physical activity. So there's some great local examples. I know some school districts doing Walking Wednesdays where they get their kids outside, and it also benefits them as well, right? Doing retreats. I know Willoughby just had an admin retreat for their administrators, and I think that sends a very powerful message when the top is setting the example of saying, connection is really important. Taking time for ourselves as adults to connect and bond is really important.
Well, and I wanted you to give those examples because sometimes that will trigger other thoughts for people and how it would fit into
Yeah.
their straight into their school. So, Kelly, our time is up already. I mean, it's crazy how fast
Really
time
fun.
goes. It
Yes.
is fun, and I actually had an idea from our last guest. She said, "Hey, if you want me to come on and do something about integration of writing into the curriculum and how it can go across the board, I'll be happy to do that." So there might be round two in season two about
Multiple
more specific.
opportunities. I
Yes,
welcome it. Yes.
it's awesome.
Well,
So
I know both you and I are going to learn more as each week and each month passes. So it'll be great to reconnect in the future and talk about all the new things that we've both learned.
I agree. And just to recap, don't forget about the emotional poverty based on Ruby Payne's book that will be coming up. And again, you can email me for that information. Don't forget about the educator business boot camp, and also take care of your wellness. Do brain research, do all these fun things. Pick something, do learn.
That's great.
So,
That's
Kelly,
right.
thank you for the great conversation today. Please remember, if you have questions about any of these programs or you want to talk with Kelly, you can get in contact with me at norm@normpotter.com. You can go through my website, structuredcreativityconsulting.com, and please subscribe to this channel. I think you're going to get a lot of great information from the people that I have had a chance to talk with. I learn something new every day when I do these. But until next week, be kind, be professional, and find solutions. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Norm. And on behalf of my superintendent, Jennifer Felker, and my governing board, I'm proud to represent the Educational Service Center of the Western Reserve. We are here for whatever you need, whether it's support on literacy, wellness, business, and everything in between. We're happy and we're proud to serve the region, and we can't wait to partner with you moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much.